Welcome to Workplace Wake Up, your go-to podcast for practical employment law guidance. I'm Jennifer Shaw, the founder of Shaw Law Group, and I'm here to help HR professionals and leaders navigate the legal minefields of the modern workplace. Each week, we tackle real-world issues with clear advice and a little tough love. Let's get started. I cannot believe school starts again for my daughter Ella tomorrow, which is insane. We only got an 8-week summer vacation, which I think is highway robbery. But anyway, she's ready to start school. She did a wonderful job her freshman year, so I am so proud of her. I'm very happy to be here with all of you today. And I want to talk to you about how to conduct performance evaluations that don't create legal risk. All right, first of all, I want to address the elephant in the room, which is many people, many employers do not conduct performance reviews at all. They think they are not worthwhile. They think they are not worth the time. They think they are unnecessary. And I have to 110% disagree. Because if you don't do performance reviews, you have nothing contemporaneous to track your employees' performance. Yes, you may take notes in a calendar, you may email yourself, but when you do a performance evaluation or a performance review, you're actually meeting with the employee and you're doing something in writing. It's much different than weekly one-on-ones, for example, where you may have an agenda or you may ask the employee for an agenda, but what you're really doing is just having a chat with them, right, about certain issues. You're not necessarily giving them anything in writing and then telling them what they need to be doing differently as a structured performance discussion. Those come in performance evaluations and performance reviews. So, a couple things I want to talk to you about. First of all, the goal of a performance evaluation or performance review is to save the employee. And what I mean by that is you should never use a performance review as a way to take corrective or disciplinary action about an employee. That's a separate issue. Remember that a performance review is capturing somebody's performance over a period of time. Maybe it's every 30 days, maybe it's every 90 days, maybe it's once a year, maybe it's once a quarter, whatever you decide to do. But what you're looking at is the totality of their performance during that review period. So if you're going to say, and as a result, I'm writing you up and I'm going to discipline you and I'm going to reduce your pay by 10% or whatever you're going to do, that's not the place to do it. Because that's an incident or something that has happened that you want to hold the employee accountable for. Now, might you say, hey, you didn't get a good review last quarter and you're not getting a good review this quarter, so I'm going to cut your pay. And I'm telling you, if I don't see immediate and sustained improvement in these 5 areas, you're not going to make it? Yeah, you can do that. But you want to make sure you have a separate document that goes through their performance during the review period. And remember the sandwich method, right? You start with something positive, you put the negative in the middle, and then the bottom bun, right? The bottom piece of bread is a little more positive stuff. And by the way, if you can't think of 2 positive things to say about someone, one for the top bread, one for the bottom bread, then they shouldn't be there anyway. Okay, so you've got to find something. Now, what you're putting in a performance review should track what you have in somebody's job description. So if you tell them these are the 13 things that you have to be doing in this role, then your evaluation should track those 13 things. I'm always fascinated when I see these systems that people purchase, right? They purchase this really fancy pants performance review process and they don't track what's in the job description or what's in the duty statement. So the questions that are being posed as part of that performance evaluation are not related to actually what we're asking the person to do. And the more they are tied, the more the factors you're looking at in the performance review are tied to what that person is actually supposed to be doing, the more effective that review will be, okay? Now, the other thing that happens a lot in performance reviews is we want to focus on what we call the hard skills. Did you produce the 100 widgets that you were supposed to produce? Did you get the report done on time? Did you meet the budget? Okay? We're really at a loss in terms of how to deal with more of the soft skills. How's their attitude? How's their effort? How well do they get along with others? Last week, if you joined us, you know we talked about holding employees accountable who do the basics of their job but don't do it in a nice way, right? They have an attitude issue or behavior issue. Those are soft skills, and those are things that you absolutely need to be documenting in a performance review, positive and negative, and you need to be including them in a job description or duty statement, all right? Those things are just as important as showing up to work on time or meeting deadlines. If you don't give the employee the expectations for the soft skills as well as the hard skills, you are not giving them all the tools they need to succeed. They're going to have no idea what is important to you. So, for example, if collaboration is really important to you, then you got to mention the ability to collaborate, and you got to hold them accountable for their collaborative efforts. And then you should reward them if they're doing a good job and they get a salary increase or an hourly rate increase. You're going to say part of this is because you're a good collaborator, right? You're going to tie it all in. You're tying in the duty statement, the job description with the evaluation, with the decisions you're making, okay? Those are all very important. Now, the legal risk that comes with these evaluations or reviews is that you could say or do things that could be perceived accurately or not as equal employment opportunity issues. So you include a statement in the review that says, when you returned from pregnancy leave, you weren't as focused and always wanted to take time to express your milk. I am not kidding right now. I just read an evaluation where that was the very first sentence in the summary evaluation for this employee who has just returned from pregnancy leave. And I'm telling you, my hair literally stood up on end, okay? You cannot do that. You cannot include things like, you were doing really well until you decided to ask for an accommodation for that condition that doesn't even seem to meet the definition of a disability. Okay, that was also present in a review that I looked at recently. What the heck? No. Those are totally separate issues. When you're in a performance evaluation or a performance review, you are looking at their performance. You are not including color commentary about whether or not they just had a child or whether or not they've asked for an accommodation or whether they're wearing the right clothes unless you have a uniform or a very tight dress code, okay? If there's no violation of your policies or your procedures, you're not going to mention those in a review. And if they are being violated, you're not going to attribute it to some personal decision like having a child, right? The why doesn't even matter. The fact of the matter is you're not following our social media policy. I don't care why you're not following our social media policy. You aren't. And there are consequences for that. Okay, so the way you avoid retaliation claims, discrimination claims, harassment claims is you make sure that everything in that evaluation or review is 100% supportable and 100% fair. Now, I'm not going to tell you it has to be 100% objective because it can't be, right? The way we get along with people, the way we communicate with people, the way we interact with people, that is subjective. I can tell you that I think I'm a good communicator, and somebody can come up and say, are you kidding me? She doesn't know how to communicate her way out of a paper bag. She's too much in a hurry. She doesn't make clear what the expectations are. I would disagree, but that doesn't mean that person is wrong. That's a subjective assessment, right? So I want you to understand that it's not always going to be possible to make something objective, like you were supposed to produce 100 widgets and you only produced 94. That's just not always going to be possible. There will always be aspects of a performance evaluation or performance review that are objective, but there also will always be aspects or parts of those documents and that discussion that are going to be more subjective in nature. So more touchy-feely, less clear boundaries, right? The other thing that I really want to focus on here this morning is this tendency that we have, and I mentioned it earlier, to do annual reviews or reviews every 6 months or monthly reviews. I actually want to encourage you to tell your leaders to give real-time, ongoing feedback. Do you need to capture it all in a review on at least an annual basis? Yes. But I don't want anybody squirreling away like Harriet the Spy and writing in their little secret notebook, well, this happened on this date, and then this happened on that date. Oh my gosh, and look what happened today. You're not giving the employee the chance to change. You're going to wait a whole year before you deliver that feedback. And I know some of you are thinking, oh, that doesn't happen. Oh, yes, it does. I've litigated these cases for more than 30 years. I get it. I see the demand letters. I see the claims before the labor commissioner. This stuff happens all the time. Why are we so reticent to give real-time feedback? I think there are two reasons. One is we don't want to have conflict. I cannot stand conflict. I will literally drive 100 miles out of my way to avoid conflict. I do not like it. I am not good at it. I don't process it well. It's just not my thing. Okay? Now, the problem is you can't be in this world without having conflict, right? You just can't. So I have to work really hard to figure out, okay, how can I have conflict in a productive way? How can I have conflict in a way that actually serves me and the person I'm having that conflict with? And I prefer to not even call it conflict because that makes my stomach hurt, right? I'd rather just call it a discussion, right? You know, a slight but never really problematic disagreement on something, right? We don't have to call it conflict, but what we do have to realize is if we're not willing to have that discussion, right, and say, hey, I asked you to do it this way. This isn't happening. I need it done. If we're not willing to do that, then we can never expect our employees to improve, because an employee can reasonably think, if they haven't told me what I'm doing is wrong, then what I'm doing is right. It is a perfectly reasonable assessment, okay? So I want your managers and your leaders to be able to give that real-time, ongoing feedback, not wait for that prescribed review period to deliver the feedback. Again, always sandwiched, always good news, good news, right? But we've got to do it. And believe it or not, the more frequently you do it, the better you're going to get at it. I promise. You can have conflict, in quotes, on very minor issues as a practice point. I don't like it. It's hard for me, but I force myself to do it. And over the years, I've gotten a little bit better at it. I'm still not great. I still want to people please the entire time. I sometimes don't communicate what I really need to communicate because I don't want to upset somebody and I don't want to make them angry or hurt their feelings. The way we do this is very important. There's always a way to deliver that kind of feedback in a calm, empathetic, professional way. I had a client a couple of weeks ago who said to me, well, Jen, you know, this empathetic, calm way of delivering feedback, that's fine, but we're blue collar workers. And I looked at him and I said, so what? That doesn't change anything. You should still be delivering it in a calm, respectful, kind manner. It doesn't matter what your job is or what you're trained to do. Everybody deserves to have that kind of a positive work environment. So I want to make sure that everybody understands that, because I think a lot of times we're looking for the exception, right? We're looking for, how can I get out of this what I need? Do I have some kind of exception here? Is there something going on that's different in my universe that means I don't have to hold people accountable, or it can be a little less than professional? It really shouldn't be. It really should be this high level of allowing people to maintain their dignity at work, giving them the opportunity to come and earn their money, get paid, be treated fairly and appropriately. That really is the expectation, and it's the right expectation. Is this easy? No. Are you going to have to calendar your performance reviews so you do them on time? Yes, just like any other project you're going to take on at work. Is it always going to be fun having the meeting where you have to communicate some not so positive feedback? No, it isn't going to be fun. But if you let the employees know your intent, which is to turn it around, to make sure that they understand what you need them to do and to give them the tools and the resources to get it done, that's really a gift to your employees. I know it's hard. I know it takes time, but as we always say, we can do hard things. We just have to commit to doing them. We just have to be sure that we understand the value and why it's so important to take that step. So before you bemoan the fact that you have to do performance reviews, take a minute to think about how positive they are. Take a minute to think about how in your organization you can use them for good. And you can really help employees get to the level where they want to be and where you need them to be. Okay, you can do this. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. You go out and have a great day. Workplace Wake Up, including our guests and hosts, do not provide legal advice in this podcast. Do not act upon any of the information discussed in this podcast without first consulting a licensed attorney in your jurisdiction. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Workplace Wake Up. If you found today's discussion helpful, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share the podcast with your HR and leadership teams. For more insights, training programs, and legal updates, you can visit us at shawlawgroup.com.